The unseen threat. In a vast and distant galaxy, the Galactic Council convened in their grand hall, a place filled with lights and shimmering decorations. Leaders from different alien races gathered around a large circular table, discussing the future of their worlds. At the center of the meeting was a holographic projection of Earth, which flickered with images of its blue oceans and green landscapes. The council members, a mix of proud warriors and wise diplomats, exchanged stories and laughter about humans, the inhabitants of that small planet. Humans are nothing but a primitive species, sneered Zorath, a tall alien with glowing eyes and scales that shimmered like silver. They have no technology worth fearing. Look at their history of wars and disasters. His words echoed in the chamber, met with laughter from the others. Kiala, a member of a race known for their brilliant minds, added, "Yes, they cannot even unite their own planet. How could they ever challenge us?" Meanwhile, on Earth, a group of human scientists and explorers worked tirelessly in a secret facility hidden beneath the ground. They were led by Captain Alina Gray, a brave and determined woman known for her innovative thinking. Her team had been developing an advanced technology called the Shroud, designed to manipulate energy and bend light, making their ships invisible to sensors. They believed that this technology could change the course of history for humanity. Alina and her team, consisting of engineers and researchers, gathered in their lab. The room was filled with screens displaying data and holograms of their prototypes. Alina spoke passionately. "We need to prepare. The galaxy may think we are weak, but we have the potential to surprise them." As they worked, strange signals began to emerge on their screens, flickering in and out like a distant whisper. The team exchanged worried glances. "What do you think it is?" asked Mark, one of the engineers. Alina frowned. "I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like anything we've seen before. We need to investigate." Back at the Galactic Council, the laughter continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent message. A council member from a neighboring sector reported that ships were disappearing near the edge of their territory. The room fell silent, and tension filled the air. Zorath's confidence wavered, and Kiala looked uneasy. "Surely, this must be a mistake," Zorath said, trying to regain control. Humans could never pose a threat, but the council had to take the reports seriously. Captain Gray's team received a message from the council, asking for assistance in uncovering the truth behind the mysterious disappearances. They prepared their ship, the Argonaut, which was equipped with the Shroud technology. As they launched into space, Alina felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was their chance to prove themselves. As they approached the edge of the Council's territory, the stars twinkled brightly around them. "Stay alert," Alina instructed her team. "We don't know what we are dealing with." Suddenly, the ship's sensors began to beep loudly. "We're picking up strange energy readings," reported Maria, the ship's navigator. "It's unlike anything we've encountered." "Can you pinpoint the source?" Alina asked, her heart racing. Maria focused on the readings. "It's coming from a cluster of asteroids ahead." Alina nodded. "Let's move in closer. We need to see what's happening." As they navigated through the asteroid field, they could feel the tension mounting. The Council had underestimated humans, but now they had the chance to show their worth. The Argonaut maneuvered skillfully, using the asteroids for cover. With each passing moment, the crew grew more anxious. "Captain, the energy readings are increasing," Maria warned. "It feels like we are being watched." Alina glanced at the view screen, her brow furrowed. "I have a bad feeling about this." Suddenly, a massive ship emerged from behind the asteroids, its dark hull glistening ominously. It was unlike any vessel they had ever seen, with sharp angles and an intimidating presence. As the ship activated its weapons, a feeling of dread washed over Alina. "We need to get out of here," she shouted. The Argonaut turned to flee, but it was too late. The enemy ship fired, and a blast of energy struck the Argonaut, shaking it violently. Alarms blared as the crew scrambled to regain control. "We're hit," Mark yelled, desperately trying to stabilize the ship. Alina's mind raced. They had to activate the shroud. Activate the shroud. Now, she commanded. With a flick of a switch, the Argonaut became invisible, but the enemy ship was not far behind. The crew felt the ship lurch as they activated the shroud. The enemy's sensors were confused, struggling to find them in the vastness of space. As the crew caught their breath, Alina realized they had entered a battle that no one expected. The Council's mockery now seemed distant, replaced by the harsh reality of their situation. "We have to warn the Council," she said, determination flooding her voice. "Humanity has more to offer than they know, and it's time to show them." The crew nodded, a shared sense of purpose igniting their spirits. Together, they would face the unseen threat that loomed over them. The fate of humanity depended on their bravery and ingenuity. As the Argonaut drifted silently through the asteroid field, hidden from their enemies, Alina knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would soon learn not to underestimate the human spirit. The battle begins. The Argonaut drifted silently among the asteroids, the ship cloaked in the shimmering energy of the shroud. Alina Gray stood at the helm, her heart racing as she tried to calm her thoughts. The attack had come out of nowhere, and now they had to figure out how to defend themselves against an enemy that had already shown its ruthlessness. "Captain, the enemy ship is still searching for us," Maria reported, her eyes glued to the sensor readings. "They seem to be using broad-spectrum scans, but the shroud is holding up for now." "Let's use this time wisely," Alina said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to gather more information about that ship. Can we get a visual?" Mark, the engineer, worked quickly at his station, pulling up schematics of the enemy vessel. "I'm accessing their energy signature. It's massive, much larger than ours, and the weapons output is frightening. They have enough firepower to obliterate a small fleet." Alina frowned. "Then we need to be careful. If we engage, we have to do it smartly. What's our current status?" "We have the shroud active, and our shields are at 80%. However, the energy drain is significant. If we stay hidden for too long, we risk losing power," Mark replied. "Can we boost the shroud's efficiency?" Alina asked. "I can try," Mark said, tapping on the console. "But it will take a bit of time. We'll have to keep an eye on the enemy." "Understood," Alina replied. "Maria, keep monitoring their movements. We need to know when they lower their guard." As they waited, the atmosphere aboard the Argonaut grew tense. Each crew member focused intently on their tasks, exchanging glances filled with determination and fear. They were the last line of defense for humanity, and they had to make this count. Outside, the enemy ship continued its relentless search, moving slowly through the asteroid field. It looked imposing, with sharp edges and a dark hull that seemed to absorb the light around it. Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted, like prey being stalked by a predator. Suddenly, the enemy ship stopped, its sensors picking up something. "They've locked onto something," Maria warned. "We need to move." "Mark, can you give us more speed?" Alina shouted. "I'm working on it," he replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. "But we're pushing the systems to their limits." As they prepared to move, the enemy ship suddenly fired a burst of energy into the asteroids, sending debris flying in all directions. Alina's heart raced as she realized they were trying to flush them out. "Everyone, hold on." With a swift command, she piloted the Argonaut through the asteroid field, narrowly avoiding the debris that exploded around them. The crew held their breath as they maneuvered through the chaos, the ship shaking violently from the impacts. "Get ready to activate the shroud," Alina shouted. "We can't let them see us." Mark nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked frantically to keep the systems running. "Shroud is still active, but we're running low on power." "Just a bit longer," Alina urged. "We need to get behind them." The Argonauts slipped past the larger enemy ship, staying low and hidden among the asteroids. It was a dangerous game, but they had to take risks to survive. As they passed behind the enemy, Alina could see the ship's massive thrusters glowing, radiating heat as it prepared for another scan. "Now," Alina called. "Mark, divert all power to the thrusters." With a burst of speed, the Argonaut shot forward, emerging from behind the enemy ship. They were momentarily free, but the danger was far from over. "Now what?" Maria asked, glancing at the sensor readings, which showed the enemy ship still searching for them. Alina thought quickly. "We need to get to the Council. If we can warn them and gather more ships, we might have a chance." The Argonaut flew through the asteroid field, adrenaline pumping through the crew. They navigated sharp turns and dodged incoming debris as they sped toward the Council's headquarters. Suddenly, the enemy ship activated its weapons and fired a shot at them. The beam of energy narrowly missed the Argonaut, striking a nearby asteroid and causing a massive explosion. "Brace for impact," Alina shouted, gripping the controls tightly as the ship rocked from the shockwave. "Shields holding," Mark yelled back, his eyes wide with fear. "But we need to get out of here now." Alina steered the Argonaut toward the exit of the asteroid field, the chaos of the battle still raging around them. The enemy ship was relentless, firing shot after shot, and the crew felt the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Come on," Alina urged as she pushed the ship's limits, praying they would escape. Finally, they broke free from the asteroid field, emerging into open space. The stars twinkled brightly against the blackness, but there was no time to celebrate their escape. The enemy ship was right behind them, firing again. "Full speed ahead," Alina commanded. "We need to reach the Council before they catch us." As the Argonaut raced toward the Galactic Council, the crew realized they were not just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The galaxy had underestimated them before, but now they would show the true strength of the human spirit. "Prepare for a fight," Alina said, her resolve hardening. "We won't let them take us down." The Council's decision. As the Argonaut sped through space, the crew felt the weight of their mission pressing down on them. They had narrowly escaped the enemy ship, but the battle was far from over. Alina Gray tightened her grip on the controls, her eyes focused on the approaching Galactic Council headquarters, a colossal space station that shimmered like a beacon of hope in the dark expanse of space. "Captain, we're approaching the Council," Maria announced, her voice filled with urgency. "But the enemy is gaining on us. They won't let us reach them easily." "Keep the engines at maximum," Alina ordered. "We need to get inside that station. Once we're there, we can rally the forces we need." Mark's fingers raced over the console as he monitored their systems. "Shields are at 60%, and our power levels are dropping fast. We won't be able to maintain this speed for long." Alina knew they had to act quickly. "Prepare a message for the Council. We need them to know we're coming in hot and need immediate assistance." Maria began typing frantically, her eyes darting between the screens. "I'm sending a distress signal now. Hopefully, they'll have the gates open for us." As they approached the station, the massive structure loomed larger, its docking bays ready to welcome ships. But just as hope flickered in their hearts, a warning flashed on the console. "Enemy ship detected," Mark shouted. "They're closing in." "Activate the Shroud," Alina commanded, feeling the adrenaline surge through her. "We have to get in." With the ship cloaked once again, the Argonaut darted toward the docking bay. The crew held their breath, praying that the enemy wouldn't be able to track them through the chaos. They were almost there when the enemy ship fired again, this time targeting the docking bay itself. "Braced for impact," Alina yelled as the Argonaut shuddered from the shockwave of the explosion. The docking bay doors were opening, but time was running out. Now, Alina urged, pushing the thrusters to their limit. They shot through the entrance just as the enemy ship unleashed a final blast, but the Shroud held strong. Once inside, the crew barely had time to breathe. They quickly secured the ship and rushed to the command center, where Council members gathered, their faces filled with concern. "Captain Gray, what happened?" Counselor Alara demanded, her voice steady but tinged with worry. "We received your distress signal just in time. The enemy is unlike anything we faced before," Alina replied, her heart racing. "They are powerful, and they will not stop until they annihilate us. We need to prepare for battle." "What do you propose?" another counselor asked, his brow furrowed. Alina took a deep breath. "We must gather a fleet and mount a counterattack. We can't let them take the initiative. If we do, they'll destroy everything." Counselor Alara nodded. "Very well, we'll mobilize our forces, but we need more information. What do we know about their capabilities?" Mark stepped forward. "They have a larger ship with heavy weapons, and they can track us even with the Shroud. We barely escaped, and we can't rely on stealth alone." "Then we must find a way to exploit their weaknesses," Alara said, determination in her voice. "Captain Gray, you will lead the fleet. We will not let fear dictate our actions." Alina felt a surge of pride. The council was ready to fight back. "Thank you. We can't waste any more time. Let's get our ships ready and strategize." As the council members dispersed to gather their forces, Alina felt the gravity of their mission. They were humanity's last hope, and they needed to stand tall against the darkness threatening to engulf them. Hours later, the fleet was assembled in the docking bay, a mix of human and allied ships ready for battle. The atmosphere was electric, filled with determination and resolve. Alina addressed the gathered crew and pilots, her voice firm and inspiring. "Listen up, everyone," she called out. "We've faced incredible odds, and we've survived. But now we need to fight back. The enemy thinks we are weak, but they are about to learn that humanity stands strong when pushed to the brink." The crew cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. Alina felt a renewed sense of purpose as she continued. "Our mission is to protect our home and our people. We will not back down. We will strike first and show them the true power of humanity." With a unified shout, the crew prepared for battle, each member ready to face the challenge ahead. They climbed aboard their ships, engines roaring to life, and formed up in formation, a formidable wall of defiance against the looming threat. "Captain Gray, your fleet is ready," Mark reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We've prepared the strategy based on our best estimates of their movements." "Excellent," Alina replied. "Let's move out, stay in formation, and remember our mission. We are fighting for our future." The fleet slipped out of the docking bay and into open space, the vastness of the universe stretching out before them. Alina glanced at the enemy ship in the distance, a shadowy figure waiting for its prey. As they approached, the enemy ship turned to face them, its weapons charged and ready to fire. The Council's fleet formed up, a display of unity and strength against the fearsome adversary. "Steady, everyone," Alina said, her heart racing. "We'll show them what humanity can do. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Engage." The fleet erupted into action, weapons firing as they charged toward the enemy. In that moment, all fear was replaced by determination, and they prepared to unleash the fury of humanity upon their foes. The first strike. The Argonaut surged forward with the rest of the fleet, its engines roaring as it accelerated into the fray. Captain Alina Gray gripped the controls tightly, her eyes narrowing in focus. The enemy ship loomed larger, its dark silhouette imposing against the stars. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins, each heartbeat a reminder of the stakes at hand. "Enemy ship locking weapons," Mark shouted from his station, his fingers flying over the console as he monitored their systems. "They're targeting our shields. Divert all power to forward shields," Alina commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to absorb their fire while we get into range." The crew sprang into action, working in perfect harmony. The ship shook violently as enemy fire hit their shields, sparks flying from the control panels. Alina gritted her teeth, feeling the impact jolt through her body. But the shields held, and she knew they had to retaliate. "Fire at will," she ordered. The Argonauts' weapons sprang to life, beams of energy shooting toward the enemy ship. Other vessels joined in, a chorus of fire lighting up the dark expanse of space. The enemy ship responded with a barrage of blasts, but the fleet's coordinated attack was relentless. Explosions erupted in space as beams collided, sending debris flying. For a moment, it felt like a dance of destruction, each ship weaving and maneuvering to avoid the onslaught. "Elena, we've got to flank them," Maria urged from her station. "They're focused on the frontal assault. We can hit them hard from the side." "Agreed. Mark, plot a course," Elena said, her heart racing. "We'll divide our fire and draw their attention." Mark quickly calculated their trajectory, his eyes darting over the screens. "Course plotted. I'll get us there." Elena took a deep breath, determination coursing through her. "Let's move." The Argonaut veered sharply, the crew bracing themselves as the ship banked to the side. They surged toward the enemy's blind spot, where they could strike without being hit. "Now," Elena shouted as they closed in. "Fire all weapons." The Argonaut unleashed a torrent of fire, and the other ships followed suit, launching their attacks with precision. The enemy ship faltered under the sudden onslaught, its shields flickering as Elena's crew took advantage of the moment. Direct hit on their starboard side. Mark cheered, his eyes wide with excitement. "They're losing power. Keep it up. Don't let them recover." Elena urged, her voice steady. She could see the enemy ship struggling, its movements becoming erratic as it tried to regroup. But just as they thought they had the upper hand, a warning blared through the ship. "Captain, more enemy ships coming out of hyperspace," Maria shouted, her expression turning grave. "They're surrounding us." Elena's heart sank as the new ships materialized, each one a harbinger of destruction. The once confident stance of their fleet wavered as they found themselves outnumbered. "Reroute power to all shields," she commanded, her mind racing. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't let them pin us down." The crew scrambled to respond, their training kicking in as they adjusted their systems. The Argonaut shook violently as enemy fire rained down, but the shields held firm. "Keep moving. We need to break through," Elena yelled, determination fueling her voice. "Focus on their smaller ships. We need to thin their numbers." The fleet moved in a chaotic dance, weaving and dodging as the battle intensified. Beams of energy lit up the darkness, each shot a testament to their fight for survival. The crew worked tirelessly, their resolve unwavering despite the overwhelming odds. "Target acquired," Mark called out, his fingers flying over the controls. Firing. Energy beams shot forth, striking an enemy vessel and causing it to explode in a brilliant flash of light. The crew cheered, but the celebration was short-lived as more enemy ships moved in to fill the gaps. "Elena, we're taking heavy damage on the left side," Maria shouted, urgency in her voice. "We can't hold out much longer. Divert all remaining power to the shields," Elena ordered, her mind racing. "We need to buy ourselves time to regroup." As the battle raged on, Elena felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on her. She knew they couldn't afford to lose, not when humanity's future hung in the balance. "Hold the line," she shouted, determination echoing through her voice. "We fight for each other, for our home." The fleet responded with renewed vigor, their spirits ignited by her words. They fought back with everything they had. Each shot fired a testament to their will. But as the battle raged on, Elena realized they needed a new strategy. "Mark, what's the status on the enemy's main ship?" "Still holding together, but their shields are weakening," he replied, glancing at the screens. "If we can just get a few more hits, then that's our target," Elena declared. "We'll focus our fire on the flagship. If we take it down, the others will follow." "Right," Mark replied, his eyes lighting up with determination. "Plotting a course now." With their goal in sight, The Argonaut and the remaining ships rallied together, forming a line aimed directly at the enemy flagship. As they charged forward, Alina felt a spark of hope igniting within her. "Now it is our moment," she shouted, her voice ringing clear. "For humanity. For our future." As they closed in, the fleet unleashed a final barrage of energy, the beams streaking toward their target with deadly precision. The enemy flagship shuddered under the onslaught, its shields flickering in the face of their resolve. "Direct hit," Mark shouted, excitement flooding his voice. "It's losing power." The crew roared in triumph as the flagship began to break apart, explosions rocking the enemy ship. The tide of battle shifted, and Alina felt a wave of relief wash over her. But they couldn't stop now. They had to finish the fight. "Let's keep pushing. We can't let them regroup," she urged. With their spirits high and their determination unshaken, the fleet pressed forward, ready to face whatever came next in their fight against the overwhelming darkness. The turning tide. The battlefield was alive with chaos. The remnants of the enemy fleet, once a formidable force, were now frantically regrouping under the relentless assault of Captain Alina Gray and her crew aboard the Argonaut. The air crackled with energy as beams of light danced across the star-studded void, each shot echoing the determination of those fighting for their survival. Alina gripped the controls tightly, her eyes scanning the rapidly changing landscape of war. The flagship that had once seemed invincible now loomed as a battered wreck. As it began to crumble, the enemy's morale faltered. Alina knew this was their moment to capitalize on the weakness. "Mark, focus all remaining fire on the enemy's remaining vessels," she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "We can't let them escape." "Yes, Captain." Diverting all power to weapons now, Mark responded, his fingers moving with precision over the control panel. The Argonaut responded with a low hum as energy surged toward its weapon systems. "Prepare for another assault," Alina shouted. "We need to break their ranks before they can regroup." As the crew complied, Alina could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The sense of impending victory hung in the air, but it was tempered by the reminder of their perilous situation. The enemy might be reeling, but they would not yield easily. "Captain, there's still a sizable fleet trying to retreat," Maria reported, her voice tinged with urgency. "They're attempting to make a break for it." "Not on our watch," Alina replied fiercely. "We have to intercept them. If they get away, they'll regroup and come back stronger." Alina's heart raced as she formulated a plan. "Mark, plot a course to intercept their retreating vessels. We can't let them escape." Course plotted. "Engaging thrusters now," Mark announced, and the Argonaut surged forward once more, joining the fray. The crew cheered as they moved to flank the enemy vessels. In the distance, the remnants of the enemy fleet scattered like leaves in a storm, desperately trying to evade the Argonaut and its allies. But Alina knew that the tide of battle had turned. "Fire at will," she ordered, her voice commanding. The Argonaut unleashed a torrent of energy, and beams rained down on the retreating enemy ships. Explosions erupted in a brilliant display of light, illuminating the darkness of space. "Direct hit. One ship down," Mark shouted, excitement evident in his voice. The crew erupted into cheers, the sound echoing through the ship as their victory seemed within reach. But as they pressed forward, a chilling realization washed over Alina. The enemy was not done yet. A massive warship, larger than anything they had encountered so far, emerged from the depths of space. Its dark hull shimmered ominously against the backdrop of stars, and it bristled with weaponry. "Captain, that ship is massive. It must be their flagship," Maria exclaimed, her eyes wide with shock. "We need to retreat." "No, we can't back down now," Alina declared, her resolve unshaken. "We've come too far. We fight." Mark quickly calculated their options. "If we hit it hard and fast, we can take it down before it has a chance to retaliate. But we need to coordinate our fire with the rest of the fleet." Then let's do it, Elena replied, adrenaline surging through her. Mark, get us into position. Maria, relay our plan to the fleet. The crew sprang into action, each member knowing their role. As the Argonaut maneuvered into position, the atmosphere inside the ship crackled with determination. They had faced countless challenges, but this was the moment that would define their legacy. On my mark, Elena said, her heart racing as she prepared to give the order. The enemy flagship loomed closer, its massive guns rotating to target them. But they were ready. 3, 2, 1, fire. Energy beams shot from the Argonaut and its allies, striking the enemy flagship with a tremendous force. The ship shuddered, and explosions erupted along its hull, sending debris scattering into space. Direct hits, shields weakening. Mark shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Keep firing. Double it up. Elena commanded, her focus unwavering. The crew poured all their energy into the attack, the Argonaut becoming a whirlwind of destruction. But the enemy flagship fought back. It unleashed a barrage of energy beams, targeting the Argonaut with deadly precision. The ship shook violently as blasts rocked its shields, sending sparks flying. Elena, we're taking damage, Maria warned, urgency in her voice. Our shields won't hold much longer. Divert all power to the shields. We can't back down now. Elena shouted, her voice a rallying cry. We fight for our home. With determination fueling her, Elena focused on the enemy flagship. It was a brutal battle, but she felt a fierce pride in her crew. They'd fought not just for victory, but for each other. As the Argonaut swerved to avoid incoming fire, Elena spotted a weak point on the flagship's hull, a gap in its defenses that could turn the tide of battle. Mark, target that weak spot, she ordered. That's our way in. Firing. Mark replied, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. The Argonaut unleashed a powerful shot, striking the enemy's weak point. The flagship shuddered violently, its systems failing as the crew of the Argonaut cheered. The tide was turning. With renewed vigor, they pressed their advantage. The enemy flagship faltered, and one by one, its guns fell silent. The crew of the Argonaut surged forward, determined to finish what they had started. Keep the pressure on, Elena commanded. We can't give them a chance to recover. The final moments of the battle were a flurry of energy and explosions, the air thick with the sound of victory. As the enemy flagship finally crumbled, the crew of the Argonaut erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the ship. They had turned the tide against impossible odds. With the enemy fleet in disarray, they had emerged victorious. But Elena knew their fight was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead. But for now, they celebrated their hard-won victory, united in their determination to face whatever lay ahead together. The aftermath. As the dust settled in the void of space, the Argonaut floated amidst the remnants of what had once been a formidable enemy fleet. Twinkling stars surrounded the battlefield, contrasting sharply with the debris that drifted silently in the emptiness. The crew of the Argonaut breathed a collective sigh of relief, but Elena Gray knew that the true battle had only just begun. Status report, Elena called, her voice steady as she moved through the control room. Mark was already tapping away at the console, checking their systems and the state of their allies. Shields are holding at 60%, but we took some damage to the hull, Mark replied, glancing at her with concern. It's nothing we can't fix, but we need to head back to base for repairs. Understood, Elena said, taking a deep breath. And the rest of the fleet. Most of our allies sustained minor damage as well, Mark reported, but they're regrouping and confirming the enemy's defeat. We've managed to drive them back. Elena felt a wave of pride wash over her. We did it. We actually did it, she exclaimed, a smile breaking through her earlier seriousness. As the crew began to celebrate, Maria approached with a serious expression. Captain, there's something we need to discuss, she said. While we were focused on the flagship, I intercepted some communications from the enemy. They're regrouping and calling for reinforcements." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, her heart sinking slightly. "Are they planning to come back?" "Worse," Maria said, her eyes filled with determination. "They're preparing to strike at other systems while we're vulnerable. We need to warn Command immediately." Elena's mind raced. They had fought hard for this victory, but the enemy was not going to give up easily. "Prepare a message to Command," she instructed. "We need to alert them of the impending threat." As the crew sprang into action, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The Argonaut had triumphed today, but the fight for survival was far from over. The universe was vast and unforgiving, and the Galactic Empire would not forget this defeat easily. The comm system crackled to life as they sent their message. "Command, this is Captain Elena Gray of the Argonaut. We've successfully engaged and defeated the enemy flagship. However, we have intel that suggests they are regrouping and planning further attacks on vulnerable systems. We recommend immediate defensive measures." Elena listened intently as Command acknowledged their report and promised to deploy reinforcements to the nearby systems. "Good," she muttered, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "We need to be ready for whatever comes next." As the Argonaut turned towards the home base, Elena's thoughts drifted to her crew. They had fought valiantly together, each member playing a crucial role in their victory. They were more than just soldiers, they were a family forged in the fires of battle. After a brief journey, they docked at the home base, the ship's hull creaking as they came to a stop. The crew disembarked, greeted by a wave of applause and cheers from the support staff, who had anxiously awaited their return. Elena stepped off the ship, feeling the warmth of camaraderie surrounding her. "We did it," she shouted, raising her fist in triumph. "This victory belongs to all of us." Cheers erupted, and the crew members embraced, celebrating their hard-won victory. But as the festivities began, Elena felt a nagging sense of unease. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Days turned into weeks as the Argonaut underwent repairs. The crew worked tirelessly, patching up the ship while keeping an eye on the galaxy's movements. The reports from Command were grim. Enemy forces were mobilizing, and the threat of a full-scale invasion loomed on the horizon. Elena held daily briefings with her crew, discussing their strategy and preparing for the worst. "We need to be ready for anything," she told them, her voice firm. "The enemy will not underestimate us again, and we cannot afford to be caught off guard." "Captain, I believe we should focus on gathering intelligence," Maria suggested during one briefing. "If we can understand the enemy's movements, we can stay one step ahead of them." Elena nodded, appreciating Maria's insight. "I agree. We'll send out scouting parties to gather intel on enemy positions. The more we know, the better prepared we will be." As the weeks passed, the crew of the Argonaut trained relentlessly, honing their skills in preparation for the next battle. They knew that victory would not come easily. It would require every ounce of strength and determination they possessed. Finally, the day came when Command called for a fleet meeting. Elena stood at the forefront, flanked by her trusted crew members, as the holographic display illuminated the room, showcasing the enemy's movements across the galaxy. "Intelligence reports indicate that the enemy is mobilizing for a massive offensive," the commander announced, his voice grave. "They will strike at our outer colonies, seeking to weaken our defenses before launching a full-scale invasion." Elena's heart raced. "What's our plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to reinforce the outer colonies," the commander replied. "We'll split our forces, sending the Argonaut and 2 other ships to engage the enemy, while the rest of the fleet holds the line of the colonies." Elena nodded, determination coursing through her veins. "We're ready, Commander. We'll face whatever they throw at us." With a final rallying speech, the crew of the Argonaut prepared for their next mission. They were no longer just soldiers. They were a symbol of hope in a galaxy filled with darkness. Together, they would rise to the challenge, ready to defend their home and protect those they loved. As the ship launched into the starry expanse, Alina felt a fire ignite within her. The enemy might have mocked their fears, but humanity would not cower. They would fight, and they would win. The final stand. The Argonaut glided through the void of space, its hull glinting under the distant starlight. Inside, a sense of urgency filled the air as the crew prepared for their most significant battle yet. Reports flooded in about the enemy's approach. They were readying for a massive offensive against the outer colonies, and the Argonaut would be at the forefront of the defense. Captain Alina Gray stood on the bridge, her heart racing as she gazed at the holographic display of the enemy fleet approaching. The tension was palpable among the crew members, but she felt a wave of determination wash over her. They had faced fear and adversity before, and now it was time to stand tall. "Status report, Mark," Alina called, her voice firm and commanding. "Enemy fleet is approximately 2 hours away," Mark replied, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "We have the advantage of surprise on our side, but they outnumber us 3-1. Alina clenched her fists, understanding the gravity of their situation. "We've trained hard for this moment. We have to use our skills and the terrain to our advantage." Maria stepped forward, a determined look in her eyes. "We should set up an ambush. If we can lure them into the asteroid belt, we can use the rocks to break their formation." "That's a great idea," Alina agreed. "Let's make it happen. Everyone, prepare for battle stations. We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice." As the crew sprang into action, Alina's mind raced with the strategy ahead. They had faced overwhelming odds before, and this time would be no different. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their home and for the future of humanity. The Argonaut navigated towards the asteroid belt, weaving in and out of the massive rocks that floated silently in space. They set traps and prepared their weapons, every crew member focused and determined. Alina felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins as she took her position at the helm. "Steady, everyone," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "Remember, we are the shield that protects our people. We will not back down." Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the enemy to arrive. Finally, the sensors beeped loudly, indicating that the enemy fleet was in range. "Here they come," Mark shouted, his eyes wide with anticipation. Alina's heart raced as she saw the enemy ships emerge from the darkness. They were a sea of menace, a dark tide threatening to engulf everything in its path. But she knew they would not go down without a fight. "Engage evasive maneuvers. Let's lead them into the asteroid field," Alina commanded. The Argonauts surged forward, the crew working seamlessly as they executed their plan. They darted around the asteroids, and the enemy ships followed, but the dense field soon began to take its toll. Alina felt a surge of hope as enemy ships began to collide with the asteroids, their formations breaking apart. "Fire the weapons," she shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. The Argonaut unleashed a barrage of fire, targeting the disorganized enemy ships. Explosions erupted in the void, the bright flashes illuminating the dark expanse. But just as victory seemed within reach, a large enemy flagship emerged from the chaos, its guns trained directly on the Argonaut. "Captain, that ship is targeting us," Mark warned, panic evident in his voice. "Evasive maneuvers," Alina shouted, gripping the controls tightly. "We need to outrun it." The Argonaut twisted and turned, narrowly dodging the powerful blasts from the flagship. Alina's heart raced as the crew worked to keep the ship steady, their training kicking in as they fought against the overwhelming force of the enemy. "Focus fire on that flagship," Maria yelled, her eyes blazing with determination. The crew targeted their weapons, firing at the flagship with precision. But it was a tough opponent, its shields absorbing the blasts and retaliating fiercely. "Shield holding at 40%. Mark shouted, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We can't give up. We have to find a way to disable its shields." Alina exclaimed, her mind racing. "Captain, I have an idea," Maria called out, If we can draw it closer to the asteroid field, I can set off a chain reaction with the asteroids, creating a barrier. Alina felt a surge of hope. Do it. Lead it into the field. As the Argonaut maneuvered closer to the flagship, the crew worked in unison, their hearts pounding as they executed Maria's plan. The flagship, believing it had the upper hand, pursued them relentlessly. Now, Alina shouted as they reached the right position. Maria triggered the explosives, causing a massive chain reaction in the asteroid field. Asteroids erupted, colliding with one another and sending a wave of debris towards the flagship. Impact! Mark shouted as the asteroid struck the flagship, its shields flickering under the assault. Alina seized the moment. All weapons, fire now. The Argonaut unleashed everything they had, and this time, their shots found their mark. The flagship's shields collapsed, and explosions rocked the ship as it began to break apart. Target destroyed. Mark cheered, but Alina's focus remained unbroken. We're not done yet. Keep firing. We need to ensure they can't regroup. The crew poured all their energy into the fight, pushing back against the remaining enemy ships as they faltered in the wake of their flagship's destruction. Finally, the last enemy ship turned and fled, its crew realizing they could not win against the relentless determination of humanity. The crew of the Argonaut erupted into cheers, their victory echoing through the ship. As the celebration continued, Alina took a moment to reflect on what they had achieved. They had stood tall against a fearsome enemy and emerged victorious. This battle was a testament to their strength, their unity, and their unwavering spirit. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, and new threats would always emerge. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were humanity, and they would rise time and time again.